Think about your earliest memory. Maybe it is a room, a face, a sound, something that happened when you were very young. You have carried it for years. It feels real. It feels yours. But here is something neuroscience has known for decades, and most people have never been told. That memory is not a recording. It never was. Every time you have remembered it, you have changed it. And the version you are holding right now is not the original. It is a copy of a copy of a copy, altered each time it passed through your hands.
This is not a flaw. It is not a sign that your memory is worse than other people's. It is how all human memory works. And once you understand the mechanism, you will never think about your past the same way again.
For most of the 20th century, scientists thought of memory like a filing cabinet. You experience something, it gets encoded and stored, and when you need it, you retrieve it, intact, unchanged, the same as when it went in. The metaphor seemed obvious. It matched how we thought about other storage systems. Photographs don't change when you look at them. Books don't rewrite themselves when you read them. Why would memory be any different? It took decades of research and one landmark experiment to prove that it is. In 1974, a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus at the University of Washington conducted an experiment that would become one of the most cited studies in the history of cognitive science. She showed participants footage of a car accident. Then she asked them questions about what they had seen. But she varied one word in the question. Some participants were asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? Others were asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? The footage was identical. The accident was the same. The only thing that changed was one word. The results were not subtle. Participants who heard the word smashed estimated the cars were going significantly faster than those who heard the word hit. On average, about 9 miles per hour faster, for exactly the same accident. But the more important finding came a week later. Loftus brought the participants back and asked them, did you see any broken glass in the footage? There was no broken glass. The footage contained none. But participants who had been asked the smashed question were significantly more likely to say yes, they had seen broken glass that did not exist. The question had not just changed their estimate, it had inserted false details into their memory of an event they had witnessed with their own eyes.
What Loftus had found has a name now: memory reconsolidation. Here is how it works. When you first experience something, your brain encodes it, converts the experience into a pattern of neural connections that can be reactivated later. That encoded pattern is what we call a memory. But when you retrieve that memory, when you actually remember it, the pattern becomes temporarily unstable. It is taken out of storage, made malleable, open to modification, and then it is stored again, but not necessarily the same way it went in.
During the time the memory is unstable, the reconsolidation window, anything present in your environment can be incorporated into it. A leading question, like Loftus's smashed versus hit, a conversation with someone who remembers the event differently, something you read afterward, something you imagined. Neuroscientist Kareem Nader at McGill University demonstrated in 2000 that if you chemically block reconsolidation in rats, prevent the restorage process, the original memory cannot be retrieved afterward. The memory was not in storage, it was in the restorage process. Block that process, and the memory is gone.
If you want to understand just how far this goes, how completely a memory that never happened can feel real, stay with this.
What this means for your life is uncomfortable. Every time you remember something, you are not watching a replay. You are running a reconstruction. Your brain takes the stored pattern and rebuilds the experience from it, filling in details, correcting inconsistencies, updating the memory with information you have acquired since. And every reconstruction is also a restorage. The rebuilt version is what gets saved. The previous version is overwritten. You cannot remember something without changing it.
Here is the part that is hardest to accept. The memories that feel most real, the ones with the most emotional weight, the most vivid detail, the ones you would stake your certainty on, are not necessarily the most accurate. Psychologist Daniel Schachter at Harvard has documented what he calls the 7 sins of memory. The most insidious is what he calls misattribution, confidently assigning details to the wrong source, remembering something you imagined as something you experienced, remembering something you read as something you saw. And the confidence with which you hold a memory is not a reliable indicator of its accuracy. In fact, the research suggests that highly emotional memories, the ones that feel most vivid and certain, are particularly vulnerable to distortion, because emotion flags an experience as important enough to be remembered, which means it's important enough to be revisited, which means it goes through the reconsolidation process more often.
Loftus spent the following decades pushing this finding to its limits. In a series of experiments, she and her colleagues demonstrated that entirely false memories, memories of events that never happened, could be implanted in healthy adults with normal memory function. In one study, participants were told by family members about 4 childhood events, 3 real, 1 fabricated. The fabricated event was getting lost in a shopping mall as a child. About 25% of participants not only accepted the false memory, they elaborated on it. They added details. They described the emotional experience of being lost, the fear, the relief when they were found, for an event that never happened.
The legal implications of this research are enormous. Eyewitness testimony is considered one of the most compelling forms of evidence in criminal trials. A witness who says, "I saw this with my own eyes," carries enormous weight with juries. But Loftus's research has contributed directly to the exoneration of hundreds of wrongfully convicted people through the Innocence Project. In a significant proportion of those cases, eyewitness misidentification was a contributing factor. The witness was not lying. The witness was reporting their memory accurately. The memory was wrong.
What all of this adds up to is a picture of memory that is almost the opposite of how we intuitively experience it. Memory does not record the past. It constructs a version of the past that is useful for the present. It fills in gaps with what is probable. It updates with what you have learned since. It prioritizes emotional significance over factual precision. It is a living document, not an archive. And the self you understand yourself to be, the continuous person with a history, is built from these constructions. The story you tell about your life is made of memories that have been revised, consolidated, simplified, and in some cases, invented.
This does not mean that memory is useless. It does not mean that your past is not real or that your experiences did not happen. It means that the version of the past you carry is a functional narrative, accurate enough to be useful, shaped by your needs, your emotions, and everything that has happened since. What it should change is your certainty. The confidence with which you say, "I remember exactly what happened," is almost always higher than the accuracy of what you are about to describe.
The most vivid memory you have right now, the one that feels most real, most certain, most yours, has been reconstructed every time you have thought about it. And each reconstruction changed it a little. You have never remembered it the same way twice. You just did not notice.
because the version you are holding always feels like the original.
If this changed how you think about something you were completely certain about, that is exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe to Wrong Instinct. New video every week.